Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dal, and this week we got an early build for the War Within Alpha, a fairly sizable build that has finally unlocked every single one of the zones for you to explore, where you can now take a flight from the Isle of Dorn down into the Ringing Deeps, further down through Hollowfall, and all the way to the depths of Ashgahead, all in a single go, which really shows off the verticality of this expansion. But also, this week features a ton of new class changes, from revamps for Frost Death Knights and Demonology Warlocks, and many other smaller yet still important changes for many other class specs out there, as well as a new hero talent spec of the Totemic Shaman. The one hero spec that I was really excited for because it emphasizes the unique aspect of shamans that separates them from every other class, and that is the use of their totems. So I wanted to do a bit of a deeper dive to explore the thematics as well as the gameplay changes that may come with the Totemic Shaman. We are still in the early alpha, and this hero spec has a lot of non-functional talents that are yet to be realized, but the idea is there and the thematics may actually surprise you. Before that though, if you guys want to see more class updates for War Within, subscribe to the channel. Otherwise, let's dive right in. So when it comes to the Totemic hero spec, we got ourselves a playstyle that's going to be focused around totems. Though for the most part, at least for Enhancement Shaman, it isn't looking to overload your playstyle with a ton of new abilities for you to start pressing all of a sudden. You're not going to be placing a bunch of totems like the good old days from like Wrath and Kata, where you place like 4 of them at a time. But instead, it does add a little bit extra value towards, at least for Enhancement, physical damage, some elemental damage, but also new totem interactions. Totemics excel at unlocking the full power of their totems, strengthening their totems and granting access to new ones. Well, really just one new one, or 2 new ones, except we only summoned 1 of them. So your main ability is going to be Surging Totem, and for Enhancement Shaman, and we'll take a look at this tree as a resto afterwards, for Enhancement Shaman, this replaces your Wind Fury Totem, where you summon a totem at your feet that creates a tremor immediately, and every 5 seconds within 30 yards, where enemies are present will take 40,000 physical damage with the damage reduced beyond 5 targets. So it's a totem that you put down every 20 seconds, and if it works in this training dummy, which I hope that it does, yep, you'll see it'll now have like a shockwave ability where it will just kind of radiate off of that target, dealing damage every few seconds. This totem lasts for 20 seconds with a 20-second cooldown, so it's essentially a totem you'll constantly want to use as often as possible. For Enhancement Shamans, to make it as easy as you can, they wanted to make this totem pretty usable, so Surging Totem as a press abilities, it doesn't glow on global cooldown. This ability is of the GCD in fact, so it makes it a little bit more usable overall as a totem. That being said, if you are having to move enemies around, the totem is stationary. So you'll want to start employing abilities such as Totemic Projection in order to move your totem around pretty regularly. So it does mean you have a little bit of this like gameplay as a shaman where you want to drop a totem and try to maintain its position. And as the enemies get to move, at least they have like a little bit of a 30-yard range to work with. So you will want to move it if enemies are moving around with the totem. It'll be one of those playstyles where you'll want to be micro-adjusting the totem. It's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. So, because it being off GCD does make it a lot easier to use. And it has a fairly large range of 30 yards to work with. So you will want to move it once in a while with Totemic, but let's say like the tank wants to move the mobs to the left, so you place the totem to the left, and you juke it to the right, and now you don't have the totem to place or Totemic Projection. There will be some weird situations where you'll have a totem and then everybody runs away from it, where you'll have to wait until you can reapply it again. So that's going to be unfortunate, and I wonder if Blizzard maybe will give you a passive ability so you can place a totem and then move it within the first 20 seconds automatically, at least to make it as easy as possible to really position it exactly where you want it. That being said, that's going to be a primary ability is the Surging Totem, and testing it out in dungeons with this stream and then logging those runs, it actually does a solid bit of damage, like upscale to level 80 content. This totem by itself actually does a sizable chunk of damage overall. This thing is worth placing down whenever it's available. When you're fighting 1 target, 2 targets, multiple targets, the totem will passively deal additional damage, and it plays into the whole thematics of Totemic. From there on though, we do have a bunch of other talents that are more passive, but they still do play into the Totemic value and helps you kind of lean and figure out what kind of a build you want to run to complement the Totemic. First, we have right hand side, which none of these talents, by the way, at least most of them, don't really work yet, not implemented, so it's not like we can really see them at work. but we have lively totems, where Lava Lash is going to have a chance to summon a searing totem to attack your enemy every 8 seconds. Since this talent and most of these don't really function, it's not like we can really test them to see their limits, but the idea that Searing Totem can be making a return as a passive way to proc it could be interesting. Especially because the next talent, Reactivity, is going to give you Frost Shocks empowered by Hailstorm or Fire Novas, causing your Searing Totem to shoot a volley of fireballs at up to 5 targets. If you can get a bunch of those totems together and then proc a Frost Shock or a Fire Nova, I think this could be a really fun, and depending how they do visuals for the totems, this could be really fun to have a bunch of sentry totems firing at enemies at once. Further down, we have even more totem upgrades like Totemic Coordination, which increases the critical strike chance of your Searing Totem attacks by 50% and crit strike damage by 30%. Or Earth Surge, whenever you cast Sundering within 40 yards of your Surging Totem, it causes it to create a tremor at 200% effectiveness in the target area. Neither of these talents function right now, so it's not like you can really pick one or the other, but you have these thematics of Lava Lashes into proccing your totems to use Fire Nova, as well as Frost Shocks with Hailstorm for them to deal additional damage. On the left hand side, we have Storm Strike, which has a chance to unleash a Surging Bolt at your Surging Totem, increasing the totem's damage by 10% and then redirecting the bolt to the target for nature damage. The damage bonus can also stack, which basically allows you to bolster up your Surging Totem. Also another talent that currently does not work. Further down, we have another choice node between Oversized Totems, which increases the size and radius of totems by 15% and their health by 30%, which is going to be absolutely amazing within PvP content. Then we have Swift Recall, where successfully removing a harmful effect with Tremor Totem or Poison Cleansing Totem, or controlling an enemy with Capacitor Totem or Earth Grab Totem reduces the cooldown of the totem used by 5 seconds. Can occur more than once every 20 seconds per totem. This allows you to basically have a little bit better cooldown reduction for certain totems. Further down, we have Imbuement Mastery, which increases the chance of Wind for your weapon to trigger by 10% and increases damage by 15%. In the middle row, we have a couple of fun options like your Amplification Core. While Surging Totem is active, your damage and healing is increased by 3%. Or Oversurge, where Ascendance, while it's active, causes your Surging Totem to be 150% more effective, which made me want to try out playing around with deeply rooted elements, which doesn't really have a high proc rate. But when it does, to pair up with a totem, that could be a decent bit of synergy. Although I think that'll be better with Ascendance to have guaranteed burst, which I think could be really fun to be put together. Then further down, we have Wind Barrier. If you have an active totem, your totems will grant you a shield absorbing damage for 30 seconds every 30 seconds. I don't really know how good the shield is going to be since this talent isn't functional, but the fact that while a totem is active gives Shaman a bit of shielding, I think could be good depending on how this ability is tuned. Further down, we have another choice node, which either increases the damage and healing of your Surging Totem by 25% with Pulse Capacitor. Or you can go with Supportive Imbuements, which increases the critical strike chance of your Flame Tongue weapon by 15% and its critical strike damage by 30%, which gives your Flame Tongue weapon a little bit more value in a very unique way. The final capstone ability is going to be Whirling Elements, where elemental motes will orbit around your Surging Totem, and your abilities will consume the motes for enhanced effects, which actually has a very nice visual. Whenever you drop down the totem, you have all these motes around your totem, and you have 3 specific buffs that amplify your base abilities. The air buff is going to cause your next Storm Strike or Wind Strike to deal 25% increased damage and cleave 1 additional enemy at 75% effectiveness, which is interesting because I feel like this is the first time that we've seen, or at least first time that I've seen, Storm Strike or Wind Strike cleave a secondary target. With the Earth buff, casting Sundering or Elemental Blast will refund 12 seconds of that ability's cooldown, which gives a Sundering 40-second cooldown a shorter cooldown, but for the abilities such as Elemental Blast, it essentially removes the cooldown from that one singular cast. For the fire buff, it increases the critical strike chance of your next Fire Nova or Lava Lash by 15% and critical strike damage by 30%. And there's already quite a bit of synergy between critical strikes and Lava Lashes, so given this ability's additional crit strike damage and chance, I think is a nice combo that has the flexibility for AoE or single target, which altogether creates a playstyle where you want to use your totem, and you want to use Thunder, you want to use your Lava Lash, and you want to use your Storm Strike at some point through the rotation. There is a little bit of weirdness with this totem right now and the way that it functions, at least that imbuement elemental mechanic, because let's say if you have the totem coming back off cooldown and you have enough Maelstrom for Elemental Blast, and you're primarily trying to do damage from a single target standpoint, you'll drop the totem, and you'll want to use Storm Strike, because that's going to be how you buff the damage of the ability, but it's not necessarily buffing it right now. Though if I use Elemental Blast, you'll notice that Earth, as well as the Fire elements, both have been consumed. So there's a little bit of bugginess with this ability for now. It's just going to be how it is for a short bit of time. At least for the most part, the totem itself and the damage it does is there. As for the buffs themselves, they do get consumed, but whether they actually amplify your abilities is still a little bit up in the air. But for the most part, that is going to be Totemic from the Enhancement Shaman side of things. As for the Restoration Shaman, however, this ability is going to be a little bit different. So what the totem does is actually every 5 seconds it checks where you are, and then the totem instead will try to place Healing Rain on your location. The thing about the totem is also it replaces the ability of Healing Rain entirely. So at first you're thinking, oh, maybe it can have 2 Healing Rains available, and maybe that together with Acid Rain could be really good. Nope, it just simply places Healing Rain where you are. This gives Shamans a bit of a weird situation where in Mythic Plus, you may want to place the Healing Rain on your melee, but as the totem stands right now, you don't actually place the totem on a set location, you just set it next to you. And it just picks your location where you currently are and places a Healing Rain. Unless they change this in the future, you may be seeing Shamans run up into melee, at least for Mythic Plus, just if they want to get the Acid Rain damage and healing components. But if you are in range, you'll probably just be placing and standing together with the other range players, passively moving your totem. I wonder if that is something they could potentially change in the future, like allowing the Healing Rain to follow the totem and letting you kind of place the totem out melee or out in range and let you move it around, or maybe give you a talent that allows it to either target you or the totem's direct location, so you have a little bit of freedom where you put this thing. From there on, we do see slight adjustments for restoration in this Totemic tree anyway, with things like Healing Tide Totem, Healing Stream Totem, Cloudburst, Mana Tide, Spirit Link, all casting a free instant chain heal when you summon them. So Lively Totem is a little bit different, where for Enhancement, this summons a Searing Totem, but for Restoration, this actually brings back one of their tier sets. I believe it was from Shadowlands' final 2 seasons that gives you free chain heals when you drop your totems. Conversely, reactivity also gets adjusted where your healing spells cause your Healing Stream Totem to heal a nearby ally immediately for 50% of its effectiveness, and for Cloudburst to store additional healing instead. With Totemic Coordination, your totems are 30% more effective baseline, mostly from the Chain Heal ability, or Earth Surge, which allows allies affected by Earthen Wall Totem, Ancestral Protection Totem, and Earth Living to receive 10% increased healing from you, which is a nice adjustment. On the left-hand side, we have more buffs to Chain Heal, which now jumps to a nearby totem once it reaches its maximum targets, closing in to bounce an additional time on a nearby ally, so it gives you extra bounce for the ability. Further down, Imbue and Mastery is going to link with your Earth Living, which increases the duration of Earth Living effect by 6 additional seconds. In the choice node down the middle with Pulse Capacitor, on the opposite side with supportive imbuements, we do have a change for Restoration, which allows him to learn a new weapon imbue, Tide Caller's Guard. A new imbue that can only be applied to shields, which increases your healing done by 2% flat. Increases the duration of your Healing Stream Totem and Cloudburst Totem by 3 extra seconds, which is an interesting new imbue that doesn't actually overwrite what you can do with Earth Living Weapon. Finally, for your whirling elements, you do have water, air, and earth elements that you can get to play with. With the water element, your next healing wave or healing surge also heals an ally inside of your healing rain at 100% effectiveness. With air, the cast time of your next healing spell is reduced by 40%. And with Earth, your next Chain Heal applies Earth Living at 150% effectiveness to all targets hit. But like we mentioned before, you are going to be able to get some free Chain Heals just for placing totems once these towns function, so it's going to be more of an automated process. This overall creates a very interesting playstyle that's actually familiar if you played Shaman towards the end of Shadowlands, where you didn't necessarily cast Chain Heal as a baseline ability. In fact, you could take a bunch of talents that buff Chain Heal, and you didn't really have to use it regularly, as using your totems allowed Chain Heal to be automatically applying to nearby allies, which made the ability much easier for you to use when it comes to dungeons but also in raids. So it's going to be interesting how they're going to end up tuning Totemic for Restoration Shamans to function in terms of PvE content, but because that it had fairly decent success way back in Shadowlands, this makes me think that Totemic for Restoration will probably be fairly successful. Again, it all depends how they're going to tune it and if they do any more adjustments for talents, but because it had success, this type of playstyle back in Shadowlands, and it worked pretty well, I imagine it should work fairly well also with this new Totemic changes. But at the end of the day, my opinion doesn't really matter. Since this is alpha, we don't really have any tuning numbers. At the end of the day, what matters is your opinion. What do you think of the Totemic hero spec for the Enhancement and Restoration Shaman? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Did it meet your expectations of what a Totemic could be in terms of the totems and how you can empower them? And what are your thoughts of how Totemic functions for both Restoration and Enhancement? And does the hero spec, most importantly, get you excited to play it or even give it a proper try? Once we get the actual true launch of the War Within, are you excited for the Totemic Shaman? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below. And also, what would you change about Totemic Shaman, since Blizzard's very keen and they've been responding to a lot of feedback on classes a lot more regularly. So feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments down below. As always, I want to thank all of you so much for watching this video, and I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts about the Totemic in the comments down below. As per usual, if you guys enjoyed this video or found it informative, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. I would very much appreciate it. And as always, in the description of every single video and live stream, we have a link to our Discord community channel. Probably the best place to reach out to me directly in case you want to let me know what you thought about this video or hang out with the rest of the community to discuss some of the upcoming changes. Join our Discord to become part of the community. But otherwise, thank you all so much for watching this video. I do hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know all of your thoughts down below. And as always, I'll see all of you guys in another video.